go. Off the Hook Sports. We begin now. John Adams joins us, and a message from our sponsor, Newbert Collision Center.
In its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that. If we wouldn't put our family in it, we're not going to put their family in it. If you're going to say that you're doing the best work in Knoxville, now saying it's one thing, producing it and providing it's another.
The largest family-owned collision center in Knoxville is Joe Newbert Collision Center.
Represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
Objective coverage.
Hey, that's new.
If we get caught, we're going to jail.
The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of Off the Hook Sports. YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app.
I'm going to need to see some identification.
Back to Dave Hooker.
Here we go. Welcome as a step closer to the Sweet 16 Tuesdays. That means John Adams will join us. Hanging tight for him will be with John Adams, the lead columnist of the Knoxville News-Sentinel, very shortly. So we've got a lot to get to, and we look forward to that on the program. Caleb, Calhoun, a couple of the topics that we'll be getting to later on, and that is, well, the Lady Vols. Your thoughts on how the Lady Vols played. That's today's tough question. And also, we will discuss a little more in topic Nico Iamaleava and what type of impact as a leader he can have on this team. What are some of his teammates saying about him? That's something that I think is very important. How are you accepted by the team? Also, a little bit later in the program, we'll have some SEC news, as with Caleb Calhoun, never afraid to dive into some SEC news. We will discuss the SEC championship game. We'll also get into Rick Barnes, and we'll also get into a whole lot of other topics as we hook up John here. As Caleb, I want to ask you first, good morning. How are you, sir?
I am good. Happy Tuesday. Just want to send my thoughts out because I live in the area and I'm connected to the area in deep ways. The Francis Scott Key Bridge. I'm sure you guys saw that collapse over the weekend. I got a lot of friends who live in the Baltimore area. Nobody I know, but just want to think about everybody. That was a horrific thing I watched. I don't know if you saw it. But.
Man, I did not. Terrible situation. God bless you. Let's hope that things work out as best as possible. Let's go ahead and bring in John Adams with the Knoxville News-Sentinel. John, nice enough to join us. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well, Dave. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, well, I'll try to take care of you. All right, John. So we got a lot to get to on the program, but kind of your thoughts on Nico Iamaleava being a guy that they trot out in front of the media. And you had mentioned, I believe it was you a week ago, that he's not even the main story of camp. And that's an incredibly positive sign. I don't think there's any question about that.
Well, I think this is one thing Josh Heupel has done since he's been here. He's brought a lot of players out to the media, and he hasn't worried about their status in terms of class designation. Senior, freshman, doesn't matter. Nico's the leader.
Wait just a second. First year he was pretty buttoned up, wasn't he?
I don't really remember that.
Yeah, I thought he was buttoned up, didn't like to have a lot of freshmen up there. Either way, he's opening up. This year he's opening up. So go ahead with your Nico comment. My apologies.
No, I just, he's had freshmen in the past. I don't remember in his first year if he did not have freshmen. Maybe he didn't, but I know in the last couple of years he's brought a lot of different players out there. It's been pretty open. Tennessee's made more players accessible than most SEC schools have.
Is that right? I didn't know that. Like, what are the SEC schools when you talk to people in the national media or the regional media that say, man, practice is pretty open here. We get who we want. It's no big deal. Don't have to pay them. On the Vol Report, brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning. What are the other programs where people say, man, this place is just pure H-hole. Hate covering the kids here because they're told that we're not respectable individuals and that deep down the coaches hate us because they're about to get fired. How many do you hear of that?
LSU has long been one of the worst, but it's been better under Brian Kelly than it was under Ed Orgeron or Les Miles. But, yeah, that's been a difficult place. Georgia has always been the best, not always, but for many years under Claude Felton as the media relations director.
Amen.
That's changed as long as Kirby been there. They're more tightened up than they used to be. Used to have a lot of access there, and they have had some off the field issues so that sometimes impacts that. But overall, that's something that's changed greatly as long as I've been in the business. There's been less access pretty much everywhere.
Agreed. Today's tough question starts off the show, and let's ask John that very question. Today's tough question brought to you by our good friends at the Hemp House.
Today's tough question. Take a side.
Take a stand.
The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of offthehooksports.com.
Want to deal with the mindset of Tennessee moving through this region. So I will ask this question first of Caleb Calhoun, then we'll go to John Adams. Tennessee's chances of making it to the national championship round, the Final Four, based off what I've seen from this region is blank. And Caleb, we'll start with you, or John, if you want to jump in there, your thoughts.
Well, I was looking at Tennessee's chances of winning the national title, given this region, not just making the Final Four. And I say it's realistic, but not likely.
Realistic. So, John, let's go national title. And then I want to go back to Caleb to get why he says realistic. But let's go ahead and go national title, not just Final Four. What do you say?
Unlikely. I mean, there's a shot at the Final Four, certainly in this region. Tennessee can hold its own, but I think it will be difficult to beat Creighton and either Gonzaga or Purdue back to back. I think that would be a tough road for Tennessee. But I just think when I look around, I watched a lot of tournament games. I watched a lot of them this past week, and before going into the tournament, I really questioned whether I didn't think UConn could make it to the Final Four because I didn't think it was that good a team. It would take, to me, a super team to go back-to-back like that. I should say I didn't think it would win a national title. I didn't even put it going to the Final Four. I just thought it would slip up after losing 3 players to the NBA from its national championship team. But the way it played, it really took care of business. And I also really liked the way Houston played. A tough game against Texas A&M, which is playing well. Houston came through in the clutch. So, I think we could be headed for a different kind of Final Four than what we had last year.
It's been a lot more physical, Caleb, and I think that Houston is the one if they ran into them at that point in the tournament, then you're all fine because that would be the Final Four. But I think Houston is the one kind of team, a la a Texas A&M, that's physical that you don't want to run into. I know Edey is a big guy who's physical at Purdue, but I don't see a tough physical team top to bottom. So, but A&M and Houston were the 2 teams that I kind of thought Tennessee didn't want to run into before the selection bracket was even announced. And I think that was evident in the SEC tournament game. Any other teams that scare you in the region of keeping teams to the Final Four or maybe a national championship game?
Well, in the region, Tennessee's region is very unique because they play Creighton and then they play Purdue or Gonzaga. Gonzaga is really the only team that matches Tennessee's tempo. Funny enough, Tennessee runs a lot more tempo this year than they've run in years past. Creighton and Purdue both want to work the inside out game. And so I think, and John, I said this yesterday, believe it or not, I said that this would be a weekend where Tennessee could use old school Bruce Pearl, because I think their best chance to get to the Final Four is to press on every made basket, play the passing lanes aggressively, and try to score in transition all the time, because I think their best chance is to out athletic both of those teams and run full court more than anything else.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. It is an unusual regional from that perspective, from Tennessee's perspective. I think Tennessee's problem in this region, it just came out of the first weekend playing. Well, I mean, St. Peter's, I don't know how it got in the tournament, but it was very limited. Texas is not good enough offensively. And I really wonder now if Tennessee in this region, I thought it was a favorable draw for Tennessee to be in this region. I like it better than the others in terms of getting to the Final Four, but I just don't know if Tennessee can shoot well enough in back-to-back games to beat the teams it would need to beat to get to the Final Four. I think that's the issue now. But I think on a given day, it can beat any one of those three teams. That wouldn't be shocking at all. But to win back-to-back with the way Tennessee been shooting lately, that would be a tough chore.
Let me give you a couple of their top traits, I think, for the Vols. And it's not just a guy named Dalton Knecht. It is brought to you by our friends at Ray Varner Ford, right there, Ray Varner Ford in Clinton.
Welcome to Ray Varner Ford in Clinton, where every turn meets new possibilities and every mile celebrates cutting-edge innovation. Elevate your journey with our pre-owned selection of quality vehicles. 2021 Ford Mustang 5.0 GT, $33,540. 2021 GMC Sierra 1500 Denali 4x4, $46,980. 2022 Ford Expedition King Ranch 4x4, $67,550. Local you trust, pre-owned vehicles you can afford. Ray Varner Ford.
Ray Varner Ford there. We certainly appreciate that and him being a part of the program. And, John, I think this team has moxie. I think it has incredible moxie. And I say that because I think they have multiple ways to win. So they don't have to have Dalton Knecht pull them out of a hole. They just have to go out there and find another way to win. I thought they've done that when Dalton Knecht has been cold. So I like the moxie of this basketball team. That's abstract. It's a bit more psychological. But what do you make of the makeup of this basketball team?
No, I think it has moxie. It's beaten a lot of good teams in the SEC, and despite the way the SEC's been flaming out in the tournament, it was a tough league during the regular season. Maybe overrated. I think the tournament has proved that. But yeah, I think it's got a nice blend of veterans, athleticism, and of course a superstar in Dalton Knecht. But when I look at this region, I see other tough teams that are also very resourceful. Creighton had a very, very difficult game in the second round. I mean, it was almost done against Oregon, which came on strong late in the year. So I give Creighton a lot of credit for going this far too, because it had to win a tough game. So I don't think Tennessee is just going to out tough any of these teams. I think this is from that perspective, I think all these teams can be pretty resourceful in this situation. I just think it's going to come down to shooting, and Tennessee could survive a 3 for 25 game from three against Texas. It can't survive that against any of these teams.
And let me clarify. I think I misspoke. John's appearance brought to you by Joe Newbert Collision Center. Newbert Collision Center. His columns comes crashing down into knoxnews.com. knoxnews.com. Hit the like and subscribe button so you can be a part of the program. So how deep does Tennessee go in this upcoming Sweet 16? We'll ask John that flat out, since this is the time of the week we have him, after a quick second from Newbert Collision Center.
In its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that. If we wouldn't put our family in it, we're not going to put their family in it. If you're going to say that you're doing the best work in Knoxville, now saying it's one thing, producing it and providing it's another.
The largest family-owned collision center in Knoxville is Joe Newbert Collision Center.
All right, so John, let me ask you, how do you see Tennessee coming out of this Sweet 16 weekend? It's pretty easy. Win none, win one, win two.
Well, before the tournament, I predicted Tennessee to go to the Elite Eight. And then when I was filling out a bracket, I didn't see them beating Creighton. So I still think Tennessee can get to the Elite Eight, though. I just don't think it can beat Creighton and either Purdue or Gonzaga back-to-back. So I'll put it in the Elite Eight. But that's real shaky because the Creighton I really like Creighton after watching it the other night.
Caleb, I did too. I like Creighton a little bit more than I thought I would, but I watched that game and I thought that Tennessee was a decent matchup against them. So after watching it, I like Tennessee, and I like Tennessee to beat Creighton. Let's say Purdue advances. To me, that's a coin flip because the styles are so incredibly different.
Yeah, I mean, in my bracket, I had Tennessee in the Elite Eight and losing to Purdue. I said this team was different than other Barnes teams in the NCAA tournament, but the way they're different is they'll actually reach the round that they were seeded to reach, which was the Elite Eight, which they've always come up one round short of that every year under Rick Barnes since he's been at Tennessee.
Good, John. That's not the goal, is to come up just a little bit short in life.
No, I mean, you don't set out as a youngster and say, man, I would love at the end of the day, at the end of my life, if I just came up just a little bit short of all my goals.
Well, I mean,
everything I strive for.
Maybe that was Hillary Clinton's deal.
That was Mark Few's deal at Gonzaga.
It was Rose Perot's deal. He goes to the devil and he goes, so the best I can do would be second, but I shake things up. I make things a little crazy, and I make this independent stuff not sound so wild. Can I do that? Okay, I'll do it. I'm signing up. I'm Ross Perot.
He didn't come up just short. He got like 16% of the popular vote.
No, I thought it was like 6. I didn't, but he split the vote on the conservative side, so he actually did in some ways win, which sounds a little bit weird. All right, that was today's tough question. Another tough question: is Dalton Knecht due for a big game? He has been in the past 4 games for Tennessee. I'm not knocking him in that Kentucky game. He scored, I believe, 39 points, but let's be frank, a lot of them were garbage time because I didn't think Tennessee wanted to be there. He has gone on to be a good player. He hasn't been needed to be a superstar, so I'm not knocking anything from this point in the retro, as the kids like to say. But in the future, as the kids like to say as well, is Dalton Knecht due for a big game? And I'll lump that together with, John, does he have to score 30 points at some point with 4 games remaining in the tournament for Tennessee to win it all? Do they need a big Dalton Knecht game, or are they just good all around?
No, they need a big Dalton Knecht game, and that's one reason I think they can beat Creighton. It's the biggest reason. Not only is he due for a big game, but going back through Creighton's season, it lost twice to Providence, and Providence's 2 big scorers combined for 99 points in those games. In the loss to Providence, their leading scorer, in the loss to St. John's, Creighton's lost to St. John's, their top scorer got 27 points. So there's a bit of a track record there where teams have been able to score. Their top players have scored well against Creighton. And go back to the game, Creighton managed to survive. Jermaine Cousinard, I think, had 32 for Oregon. So I think Dalton Knecht is due for a big game, and I think he's going to have one against Creighton, and I think Tennessee will need
Caleb, look at our guy, John, not just bringing his opinion, but bringing some big-time stats to the program.
Hey now.
All right. Let me ask you. Caleb Calhoun.
Hey now. Hey now.
Let me ask you, Caleb, do you think that Dalton Knecht is due for a big game? Does he have to score 30 at one point? Or does he have to be the man, whatever it is, 30, 35, 40 in one of these games to say, hey, dudes, we're winning the Natty. My name's Tennessee. Let's rock and roll, baby.
Well, I got to take the likelihood of this. Would Dalton really have a chance to do it if John didn't say he had a chance to do it? I mean, this is the John Adams that for the longest time, the Knoxville
Fired Philip Fulmer.
Yeah, people just thought you hated Tennessee, John.
Yeah, John.
Well, I mean, when I was writing really critical pieces of Tennessee, you have to remember what the state of the program was and the state of the university leadership was.
You know what FAPI means, John?
Wait.
You know,
Y'all don't,
means,
Dave,
John?
you don't want to say that term. You don't want to say that term because you guys look up what that term means. I cannot believe Dave just said that.
He was fat and happy. What's wrong with being fat and happy?
That's not what that means.
Yeah, that's what it means,
Dave.
You're sitting on a national championship. You're fat and happy. That's the term. That's what it means here. All right, Caleb, what were you going to ask John there?
All I was saying was that, no, I think Dalton Knecht is due for a big game too. John, I was going to ask you, I talked about this yesterday because I was trying to think about this from an X's and O's standpoint. Creighton has one 7-footer to defend the paint, and I think Jonas Aidoo, people can hate me on this, I think he's too soft to go up against really elite 7-footers. He's shown that to me all year. So do you think Tennessee should rely on the 3-point shot or the mid-range with Dalton Knecht to win this game?
It's got to be his choice, isn't it?
Well, I mean, I think he can. If you go back to Cousinard, again, using him as an example this past weekend, he scored from everywhere. And I think that's maybe what Knecht can do against this defense. I'm not Creighton's 7-footer. I don't know. I don't know that he's an elite 7-footer. I know he's got good numbers, and I haven't watched Creighton play. I saw him in that game, and I hadn't watched them play before the tournament. I just seen snippets of their play. So maybe I'm underrating him. But I agree with what you say about Aidoo. I think an elite center, i.e. a Zach Edey, he's not up for that. But maybe against Creighton he is. You've probably seen Creighton more. You probably can answer that better than I can.
Well, I just know that the center has like 30 pounds on Aidoo, and I think that's what kind of – I think the key for Aidoo would have to be he'd have to pull him away from the basket by hitting like those like 10, 15-footers. You know what I'm talking about? And
yeah. Oh, yeah. He's done that sometimes.
Yeah. And Edey, too, for those that haven't seen him or only basketball fans in college, I mean, he is like a during the NCAA tournament, he is a throwback player in every sense of the word. That guy's more Kevin McHale than Victor Wembanyama, John. I mean, it's just not, he's a different old school type of basketball player for those that haven't seen him, and he's that dude.
Yeah, he's what 7-footers used to be. I mean, they set up in the post. One thing that's impressed me about him is just his technique, the way he moves. I mean, he's not just a big dude in there. He knows how to play the game inside. He's very good, and he's just going to cause a world of problems. If Tennessee reaches that point, he will cause a world of problems for them.
Yeah, you don't want to be in a situation where you're down 6 points late because he's going to be able to manufacture 2 points and 2 points and 2 points and 2 points. And then suddenly you're going to be, instead of down 6 minutes late with 8 minutes left, you're going to be down 6 points with 2 minutes left. Ray Varner, local you can trust innovations that you can afford. I want to remind you that Rick Terry Jewelry Design is nice enough to provide our fire opals for our celebrity bracket challenge. John, one of 4 people in the tournament who is already mathematically eliminated. So for those of you that don't think John does a great job on picking games or covering sports in general, that provides you some fodder. But with Rick Terry Jewelry Design, they want to be your jeweler, affordable game day jewelry. How about the Fire Opals, the Tennessee tradition? RickTerryJewelry.com. RickTerryJewelry.com. The thing that scares, I think, Tennessee fans or should about Edey is that would be the second game of the weekend, John. And it's not like the triple option in football, but with Purdue, you have to make some pretty significant adjustments, especially offensively. That being said, I feel like they have kind of a poor man's Purdue in Creighton. Do you not?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And maybe it had to do with my television. I didn't think Creighton Center was as heavy as Caleb said he was. He just didn't look as heavy. He does look heavier than AD.
Can I see if I can? Can I go ahead and see if I can pull up a picture of him so those know that exactly who we're talking about? Let's see. Okay, there we go. And he is actually the one on the left. So that's
oh, okay, yeah. He's definitely bigger than I thought he was on
he
first
is,
view. Yeah.
and perhaps a different species altogether. So that's him on the left. In the middle is Thundar the Barbarian. To the right's Ariel. So your thoughts on Gen X videos, cartoons that came up during my day, Caleb?
I mean, I don't know. I don't know. You're talking to 2 totally different generations from you, Dave. So
we're getting a little closer. There, I tried to pull him up. Ookla, Eddie.
The guy in the front looks like Ken from Street Fighter.
So when it comes to going against a 7'1" type of guy like he is, and I know Adu's 6'11", Caleb, it's not the size in terms of height, it's the mass. I mean, this guy, Edey, has an NBA body like today. He just doesn't have the NBA style as of today. So maybe the NBA body of 20 years ago.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of, do you guys remember the early 2000s when Kevin Garnett was in Minnesota and Tim Duncan was like at his peak in San Antonio? And there was actually for a while a debate over who was the better player. The problem with Garnett was that whenever he would try to post up Tim Duncan, Duncan had about, Garnett would always have to do that fadeaway because he couldn't back him down under the basket because he was so skinny, even though he was finesse and athletic. I don't think Jonas Adu is Kevin Garnett. I don't think Zach Edey's Tim Duncan. I'm not going there, guys.
But I don't think that's a huge stretch, the Edey Duncan comparison. I think Edey would be a very poor man's version, John, of Tim Duncan. I don't hate that comparison by Caleb.
No, I remember watching Duncan. I think he played at Wake Forest as a freshman in the NCAA tournament. Yeah, he had obviously he was a superstar, but I really like Edey. I liked him because I don't think I watched an entire Purdue game. I've watched parts of games, and I saw him last year too. Saw him against Tennessee, I should say, also this year. But I was just really impressed with him in that second round game. For one thing, he makes his free throws. I think he had an off game in first round game, but for the most part, a lot of big guys just never master that. He looks like somebody who is really big that has really worked on his game. I don't think he's naturally athletic like some of these 7-footers you see, but he's 7'4", and he just looks like he's really gotten the most out of his ability. So I kind of like watching him play.
I kind of do too. It's very old school. I bet Caleb hates it and thinks that they need to make sure and not punt when the ball's on their own side.
I don't hate old school. First of all, I'm a hardcore Grizzly fan, and when we had Marc Gasol and Zach Randolph, we were playing old school basketball while the rest of the team was spreading it out. If we had just gotten a shooter, we could have won a title. But yeah, it's funny you guys say that.
Did you trade away Kobe at one point?
We never had Kobe. No, we never.
That was the Hornets. Very similar.
Yeah. But what I was going to laugh at was that it's funny you brought that up because when you think about styles of play and thinking, Matt Painter
I mean, guys, is he just you brought up Tim Duncan at Wake Forest? Is he just a modern day Dave Odom?
I thought you were going to give him modern day the head coach for the Spurs, which would be
because Popovich has titles. Matt Painter has had a history of flaming out of the tournament. Dave Odom had. John remembers this because he said he remembers watching Tim at Wake Forest. Dave Odom had 2 NBA centers Tim Duncan's senior year and got bounced out in the first round. Lauren Woods and Tim Duncan, and he didn't realize that you should maybe play both of them.
Yeah, I also remember it. I guess this was Wake Forest in 1993. Played Kentucky in the NCAA tournament. I think it was either Elite Eight or Elite Eight or Sweet 16 game, and it was a very talented team. And Kentucky was out on them like 34-10 to start the game, pretty much over.
It's on our poll question. Tennessee's chances of winning the national title is blank, realistic, blank, unlikely, blank, still a long shot. John's appearance is brought to you by our good friend at Ray Varner Ford. Check them out, Ray Varner Ford in Clinton. You'll be treated like one of the family, and you'll also be treated by a person that you know you can trust for not just years or months, but generations. That's Ray Varner Ford. I speak highly of him because I'm a huge fan right there in Clinton, Tennessee. So, tough question to ask, but Caleb, I'm going to lob it at you. If I gave you the option of you can pick the style of player you most want, Edey's going to be pretty far down in the line, right? You want a press guard who can push, let's say maybe Derrick Rose in his one MVP season. You want a guard who can hit it, or I could have gone Steph Curry and he brings the ball down. You could go a guard and a guy that's just going to shoot it and knock it down like Ray Allen. You go 3 swing man like Jason Tatum. I could go on and on and on. But not necessarily the person you would want, but where does a back to his back defensive center rank in the type of player you want when you start Caleb's basketball club?
Not as high as a center who can pull away from underneath the basket. Because I think
I'm wondering where a center even ranks for you altogether. Like I would take a swing man Dalton Knecht over any of the positions I mentioned.
Well, wings are kind of interesting because like the wing, and LeBron started this, and then Kevin Durant, Carmelo. I mean, we can just go down the list. Kawhi Leonard when he's healthy. There's been like a whole, change of like wing players really being the heart and soul of a team. The problem when you have a wing player is like, you never know how to build around them. Do I go for a more effective backcourt? Do I go for a front court? And that's made it tricky to actually construct a team around. I think Dalton Knecht, this team is constructed well around him, but it requires good coaching to know actually how to use wings properly, which Tennessee has in Rick Barnes, which is why Dalton Knecht. I'd rather have Dalton Knecht with Rick Barnes, honestly, than Zach Edey with Purdue. Because again, if Jonas Ada was hitting that 15-foot floater, guys, Zach Edey can't do anything. Zach Edey can't leave the paint. I mean, he really can't.
No, he can't.
And that's going to be a big problem if Ada is just hitting the mid-range shot at that point.
Yep. I mentioned to you earlier, portions of the program are brought to you by Hemp House, the premier hemp dispensary online with a wide variety, great selection, and strict standards to ensure you only receive the best in CBD or Delta products. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. John's appearance is always brought to you by Newbert Collision Center. For over 50 years, Newbert Collision Center has been East Tennessee's best choice for quality repair work and fantastic customer service. JonesNewbertCollision.com. JonesNewbertCollision.com. So if I give you the physical makeup and the play style of any sort of player, who are you picking first to bring out the University of Adams athletics?
I didn't think I'd be answering that question today. I would no. I like teams that can shoot. I like a wide open game, fast paced game, jacking up threes, run and gun. That kind.
Do you want Allen Iverson?
Allen Iverson can't shoot threes.
Well, I know he can't shoot threes, but
I didn't say I wanted.
I know he can't shoot threes.
No, I want Curry.
I know he can't shoot threes, but he would be more up and down. My argument with John, because maybe I thought he was going to go Curry, is I don't think Curry gets as many open looks, because if he were on another team, I think he gets a lot more open looks because of the team he's on. I know Klay Thompson's not the same, but would you argue that, John?
Well, I mean, I think when I watched him, he gets a lot of open looks.
Yeah, but he's pretty good. He's got the crotch knocker down there.
He's the mentally softest player in the NBA, Klay Thompson. He's very easy to
Klay Thompson or Steph Curry?
Klay Thompson. Steph Curry's not clutch, by the way. Honestly, Steph Curry, I'd rather have Dalton Knecht shoot the game-winning three than Steph Curry any day, every day of the week. Steph Curry, look at his stats in the playoffs. He's horrible on game winners.
I would rather have my clients.
How did they win championships?
Because the clutch team never was necessary because they were so dominant. It wasn't ever close.
I would rather have my clients, my listeners, be clients of Banks and Jones, because I know they'll be way taken care of. Shift back to basketball. Banks and Jones, proud to be represented by Tennessee's trial attorney, Play to Win. Banks and Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks and Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks and Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks and Jones. T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com. All right, this one's kind of rough. How long can Kellie Harper hang on? First, let me start with you. John, what did you think of the Lady Vol basketball exhibition on Monday that happened to be in the NCAA basketball tournament?
Well, it again showed its comeback ability, but it comes back, but then it doesn't close the deal, and that's what you have to do in the NCAA tournament. You don't get points, obviously, for a nice comeback, coming back from a 20-point deficit, cutting it to 2. Yeah, Tennessee. I mean, I thought Tennessee would lose to NC State. It did. I think Tennessee has Elite 8 talent, even though it didn't get that far. I think Kellie Harper will last one more year. I think Danny White, the AD, will fire after next season, make a change.
Caleb?
I think it's ultimate humiliation in debasing itself for Tennessee if they keep Kellie Harper for even one more year. Let's think about this for a minute.
Come on. I mean, that's a little subtle, isn't it, Caleb? Just, come on.
No.
I mean, let it go,
it's
Caleb.
Not.
Let it
Tennessee just lost to the coach that was hired to replace Kellie Harper when she was fired at NC State. like this is the Lady Vols program, the pinnacle of women's basketball, and they hired a coach. And they just lost to a program that fired a coach that they went and hired. Now, maybe Philip Fulmer and they thought that they were getting Gene Stallings, like when Alabama hired Gene Stallings 20 years after he was fired by another school. Okay, maybe they thought that's what they were getting in Kellie Harper. But they weren't. They hired her, and I rant on this all the time, John. This is one of my biggest pet peeves. Never.
Oh, you seem wound up. Go ahead.
Never hire a basketball coach because of one hot NCAA tournament run. It happens all the time. And it seems like athletic directors think that's indicative of them doing a good job at the place they were at. Kellie Harper made one NCAA tournament at Missouri State. Now, she got lucky and got to the Sweet 16 with that NCAA tournament run. And then the administration decides, well, you know what? This Missouri State coach who had one Sweet 16 run and one NCAA tournament appearance in 5 years and was fired by NC State, she's real cut out to be the Lady Vols head coach. And I just...
Caleb, would you mind just summing all that up in a few paragraphs and send me the email? I'd like to run it at my email column if you don't mind.
Really?
I don't think he's
I mean, it's true. She wasn't qualified for the job when she got it. And
she's a Lady Vol through and through, Caleb.
That's
exactly what it was, wasn't it? I mean, for the crew, I mean, that made it easier for Philip Fulmer and was a huge, monstrous win early in his illustrious athletic director campaign.
The mafia surrounding that program is going to kill the program. I'm dead serious about it. There is a Lady Vol contingency that is stuck in the 70s that says things are done this way and only this way, and this is how we do it. And it's a mafia mentality, and it's going to ruin the program. It's going to ruin the program. And by the way, John, you'll bring up Danny White, that how much he cares. I don't think Danny White's the issue. I think it's the Lady Vol contingency that surrounds Danny White and surrounds the administration that pressures you to say, you need to hire a former Lady Vol. By the way, Pat Summitt wasn't even a former Lady Vol. People need to kind of figure that part out. She didn't play for Tennessee. Okay, so I don't know why they do that, but they demand it, and they demand that you don't do certain things to recruit. They demand you act in a certain way, and they take all the fun out of it because they're so stuck in a time. Kellie Harper made, I think she made 3 NCAA tournaments in her career. And it was like a 12, 13-year coaching career before Tennessee hired her. And Fulmer at the press conference, I'll never forget, said, she's won everywhere she's been. Really? Really? She's won everywhere she's been. And now you just got beat by the school with the head coach, by the school that fired that head coach. And you're supposed to be the most elite program in college basketball, and you thought that head coach was good enough for you.
John, you've been really strong.
Never thought the Lady Vols program would be compared to the Mafia. So that was kind of
the contingency, the way they run the athletic department.
Yeah, and the problem is it's the Mafia post like 2000. It's not pre-Mafia. If they were pre-Mafia, pre-2000, it'd be like, hell, you're winning all kinds of national titles. It's post-Mafia where they can't even control Vegas anymore. And I've got to deal with some dude named Eddie who's got to take my card to see if I qualify for a free drink. But it's not personal. So, John, this basketball team, if they go out and do what, it's a definite in Danny White's mind next season that they're getting rid of him. Her.
Kellie Harper. Yes, the coach. Yeah, I just think if you make it to the Sweet 16 next year, I still think you should make a change. I don't think it'll advance that far. It's hard to imagine the team being better without Rickea Jackson than it was with Rickea Jackson.
Well, now, wait a second. I'm going to back my guy Caleb on this because he wrote after the SEC tournament that it's time to make a change. And every source that I talked to said, well, he can say that and he might be right, but it's not going to happen in this particular year. And you seem to be saying the same thing. And I know you talk to people. So if we all think that that's the best she's going to do next year, then why not go Caleb's route and go ahead and rip the Band-Aid off?
Well,
John?
Because Danny White didn't, I think it makes him look bad because last year gave her contract extension. No, I'm looking at it from his vantage point. That shouldn't be a factor. No, but I think it is.
John, you have never looked at something from a vantage point of this could get me in trouble. And if he's looking at it from that vantage point, then maybe he's not the athletic director that I thought he was.
Well, one thing about him, we've talked about this before, he has a great record of hiring coaches. I think he could hire someone better. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And I think he can save some money by waiting till next year to make the show. I mean, if it were my call, yeah, I would make a change now, but it's not my call. So,
but what's the money for this crew? I mean, Nico Iamaleava is making more money than Kellie Harper is, and I hate to tell you, it ain't even close. So what's money to this institution?
Yeah, but he doesn't have his spouse on the payroll.
Well,
I just don't understand. I mean, explain what you mean about that spouse on the payroll.
Oh no, I'm just joking. I mean, Kellie Harper's husband is an assistant coach.
Yeah.
Yeah,
well,
Nico is not married, unless
I don't think they're going for a 2-for-1 or keeping Kellie to keep him.
No, I just think. I mean, yeah, I would make a change, but I just don't think Danny White will. Do you think he will?
I actually don't either. I'm 100% in agreement with you, but I just don't understand well, that's the narrative coming out of the university. When I'm not afraid to say it. More people clicked on Caleb's column on our website for the past 30 days about Kellie Harper should be fired after the SEC tournament so that she doesn't give herself a chance to keep her job. Well, she kind of sort of did. And they made her run against the team.
Sort of did. She got bounced out in the second round.
I know I'm reaching. I know. But they made a run. So you leave that game and already. I know. They made
one
a
win
run.
Is a run? Where's this program falling to?
No. They made a run. Here's I'm trying to defend you here, Caleb. They made a run in the second half. So you say to yourself, I'm being devil's advocate. So I say to myself, well, they kept fighting for her and they made a run there. And let's see what she's going to do next year, because those ladies fought hard for her. That's the argument. I'm not saying I believe it. And the run is certainly not a one-game win. I didn't mean that. I meant just in the second half.
You know, Alabama was very close in a lot of their losses in 2006. They probably should have kept Mike Shula around for another year. I mean, they almost won a lot of those games in 2006. So they should have just kept Mike Shula going forward, right, guys?
The rest of the SEC says amen very loudly. We're talking about, we agree on this, but here's how I think Kellie Harper could save her job. Funnel a huge portion of her salary through shell companies into the NIL fund.
I'll be the shell company.
She and her husband are making over $1 million, so that's $500,000.
My hand is raised. I'll be the shell company. But not all of it's going to Lady Vols. A lot of it's going to some football players. But I'll interview Lady Vols if it means we can get the football players.
So she puts her money into that. She goes out and gets the 3 best transfers she can buy. She hires a tactician as an assistant coach, someone like Bob Starkey at LSU that works for Kim Mulkey. He's got he's a very good tactician, proven over decades. Get that kind of, and then hire a new recruiter because they're not recruiting.
Yeah, they have it. They actually have a terrible class, I think, this year.
Yes. Yeah. And then one more thing, lighten the schedule. She played a tough non-conference schedule. That's not going to serve her well. It helps her strength of schedule, helped her seeding in the tournament. But next season, she needs to worry about making the tournament. So she's got to get 20 wins.
She needs to call Boundless Moving. Boundless Moving, you can Google it, from their 2-hour minimum to a turnkey operations, which I'm sure she might need because she needs to go ahead and get into that new house, wherever that may be. They've got you covered. That is Boundless Moving. They made my move just complete effortless, and I'm sure they could do the same for Kellie Harper. So that's Boundless Moving. Again, check out Boundless Moving. They can actually come in and do absolutely everything, or you can have like a slave 19-year-old who helps them carry some stuff and save yourself a little bit of money. But I went with that route, but you can do whatever you want. That's Boundless Moving. It's absolutely phenomenal. John, so if I give you these 3 options, she is fired in these next couple of days, she is fired after next year, or she hangs on out of that. Not only what would be your pick, but how would you rate them in odds of probability?
Oh, well, I would go heavy on fired after next year.
Okay.
Because I just don't think the team will be as good next year, and it lost 13 games this year and couldn't get past the second round. That tells me a best case scenario for next year's team would be to make the tournament and then lose in the first round.
Good gracious. All right. If they don't make the tournament, then I'm going to pull this show up right now, and I'm going to pull all of our analytics up and show everybody how Caleb was right. 2 weeks ago? If you're waiting for another this is one thing to wait for an NCAA tournament. It's another thing to wait for a whole season if you don't think she's the one. If Danny White's thinking what John Adams just said and he's not pulling the trigger, God bless him. It's not going to last long term.
Well, I will say this. You know who wouldn't have been scared to pull the trigger on this? Dave Hart. Dave Hart would have, whatever you want to say about Dave Hart, he'd have gone right. He'd have pulled the trigger on Kellie Harper in a heartbeat if he needed to.
Yeah, he would have just probably rented her rented the car and run her over and try to get away with it.
He would he would have said she can't be called Lady Vols coach anymore.
Right.
Oh yes, that is very true. But I think we'll see that, and this is going to be data because I'm going to repurpose this later this afternoon. But I think we're going to see an announcement in the next couple of days. I disagree with you. I think, guys,
really,
I think Danny White's going to make an announcement by Friday.
I got a hunch.
I think he's going to make an announcement by Friday.
Really?
And
what do you base that on? A gut feeling? That's what Dave Hart used to hire Butch Jones.
I think that he's waiting for one. This is a good time to fire her because Tennessee's making a Sweet 16 run in men's basketball, so you don't have to deal with any sort of publicity fallout from doing it. So it's a good time to fire her, and you can begin your coaching search while the NCAA tournament's going on and hire who you want to hire. I'm just saying, this is actually they say there's never a good time to fire. No, there's a great time to fire. When one of your programs is generating a ton of news, you fire the coach of the other program. That's a great time to fire. So
all right, let's go. Yeah. Caleb versus John. Caleb versus John is there will be an announcement that Kellie Harper is fired at some point in the coming days before the 2024-2025 season. Caleb's taking that side. John's taking the other. What is a friendly wager between you two? I'm thinking you have to do the one shirt entirely shirtless, one show entirely.
I'm not doing a show shirtless, so that's not happening.
Okay.
No, I'm not either. And no, I'm not making any bet on it. Even though it would be an easy win for me.
Ouch. I don't know why they're not just making it right now. John's appearance, as always, is brought to you by our good friend at Newbert Collision Center.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that. If we wouldn't put our family in it, we're not going to put their family in it. If you're going to say that you're doing the best work in Knoxville, now saying it's one thing, producing it and providing it's another.
The largest family-owned collision center in Knoxville is Joe Newbert Collision Center.
Hi, I'm Rick Terry, and we at Rick Terry Jewelry Designs pride ourselves in the highest quality craftsmanship from a family-owned business here in Knoxville for over 35 years. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we also take pride in being an affordable option for all your game day accessories, especially those fire opals. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we want to be your jeweler every day and especially on game day. Go Vols!
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
How's it going, guys? This is John Clabo with Tennessee Homemade Wine and Tennessee Cider Company, and I could hardly sleep last night. I'm so fired up to tell you guys about the club. No longer do you have to order just wine. Now you can get your favorite hard ciders and your favorite homemade wines shipped right to your front door once every quarter. Whether it's 2, 4, 6, or 12 bottles of either or, maybe some of both, get excited, get fired up, join the club today.
2021 Ford Mustang 5.0 GT, 33,540. 2021 GMC Sierra 1500 Denali 4x4, 46,980. 2022 Ford Expedition King Ranch 4x4, 67,550. Varner Ford, your East Tennessee Ford dealership.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys.
Excuse me, Your Honor.
Play to win, banksjones.com.
Who's this guy?
Hello, wizard.
The Dave Hooker Show,
Ooh.
a presentation of Off the Hook Sports,
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
Who wants to talk some Nico this day in Tennessee sports history coming up as well? John Adams, nice enough to join us by Newbert Collision Center. And let's go ahead and get started right now. I have set this on our YouTube poll, and you can go ahead and vote for it now. This is what Nico Iamaleava had to say yesterday when he visited with the media. I know what I came here to do, and it's my job to go get that done. That's from Nico Iamaleava. So, John, let me begin with you. Nico is blank, and I give you 3 C words to choose from: cool, confident, cocky.
Oh, he's confident. He's just what he needs to be.
Okay.
And he's also accountable. I like the fact he's saying this, basically, this is what I was hired to do. And he was hired. And I know what my job is. He's accepting the responsibility. I really like that.
Caleb? Cool, confident, or cocky?
Oh, I think confident too. And I think he's been confident the whole time. And guys, I read that quote, and I know it's standard coach speak, but what I wanted to talk about is, John, tell me if I'm crazy. I think Nico was dropping a hint of, I should have been the starter last year. I should have been starting the whole time.
I think you're reading too much into that, but he should have been. I mean,
I think he should have been, and he also had another quote that Caleb may be referring to as I prepared every week this upcoming season and this offseason, just like I did in the game weeks. Well, if he prepared like that, then he should have started over Joe Milton.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think anybody who watched that bowl game had to be thinking, why hasn't this guy been playing all year?
No. And, there were even odds on it. Brought to you by BetUS. With BetUS, you get 125% sign-on bonus 3 times plus 10% of that bettor's insurance. BetUS, a partner of Off the Hook Sports, so support them with that click right down below.
America's favorite sportsbook and casino. Live betting and racebook. We're celebrating 30 years with a historic offer. A 125% sign-up bonus on your first 3 deposits. Plus 10% gambler's insurance. Get started today. BetUS, where the game begins.
I'm going with cocky, guys. And cocky has a negative connotation, but not in this case. You better be cocky. You better be, you can keep it behind closed doors if you want to, but at the end of the day, you better look at yourself in the mirror and say, I don't care if his name's Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, or whoever he is. I'm the best quarterback that's walked the face of the earth. And I got no problem with that, John, if he looks himself in the mirror and says that every single day. I think he's cocky, and I think there's something to be said for that in a positive manner, because I covered a guy who is exactly like that in Casey Clausen. I think Casey was cocky deep down. I think he believed he'd get it done. And when you ask him, I go, what do you guys need to go out to do today? It was a win. Like, we were idiots. And he was kind of right.
Speak for yourself, Dave. I think no, I think he's setting just the right tone. You don't have to go, if he were cocky, he'd say, well, I'm here to win a couple of championships, and that's no problem for me. I'll do just that. Thanks for buying me, guys. No, I think he set the right tone. I think this guy is more mature, a lot more mature than the average first-year player. And again, I know that's an intangible, but the more I think about it and the more I look back on last season, this guy should have been playing. He should have been the quarterback.
I want to say shoulda, coulda, woulda, Caleb, but it is something that kind of sticks in my craw because I was right about it from the get.
Well, and this is the quote to the reason I brought this up is Nico himself said, quote, he was asked if he was asked about if he's approaching anything different this year. And he said, I think, like I said, even for last year, I think I approached every day like I was the starter. And then he was asked again if it feels different being the starter. And he said, I won't say it necessarily feels different. I think now just knowing I'm the starter, a lot of guys depend on me. He's saying like he's been approaching this since like he was the starter since last year. And I think he thought I was for keeping him safe or not starting him last year because he even talked about how he needed to put on weight. But I think that I will say this. I think he doesn't feel like he got a fair chance to actually win the starting job last year. And that wouldn't be the first time someone didn't get a fair chance to beat out Joe Milton for the starting job, like Hendon Hooker didn't get a fair chance either.
Okay. That's conspiracy, Caleb, but it's not crazy, Caleb. And here's what I'm going to tell you about that. Well, I'll tell you first. It's Don Self, State Farm customer service still matters. For over 40 years, they built their business on taking care of the customers in the greater Chattanooga area. Call 423-396-2126, 423-396-2126, or go to donself.net. That's donself.net. It's conspiracy to think that coming into the season or at any point during the season, Nico Iamaleava believed that he should be the starter and first-team player over Joe Milton. That's a conspiracy in and of itself that would involve more than one person. So, therefore, it is a conspiracy. But I think it's really, really believable. I think when Nico goes to his dad or goes to somebody else, he's not complaining, but he's saying, I'm better than that dude right now. So, I should be playing ahead of him. So, I don't think it falls into crazy, Caleb, at all. I think it's on the money, and I think that the Iamaleava family would like everybody to know out there, despite the narrative that was passed along that he wanted a red shirt, that he was ready to go last year and probably could have helped the Vols, which Caleb and I disagree on, in the win-loss department. I think he was ready to go last year, John.
Yeah, he probably was. And again, we saw that in the Orange Bowl performance. That didn't look like someone starting his first college football game.
Right, Citrus.
Citrus. Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. I'm confusing him with Hendon Hooker. Here's the thing, though, with Josh Heupel. And most coaches are going this route. They are very reluctant when you have a guy who's perceived as a team leader at quarterback to make a change. I think the whole narrative changes dramatically if Joe Milton hadn't played well in the Orange Bowl the year before. I just think after that, I think the team liked Joe Milton. They looked to him for leadership. But I think
that narrative's been that he was a great leader. It's so overplayed.
Yeah, well, again, I'm a firm believer in talent trumps everything else. I'm not speaking for myself here. I'm kind of conveying Josh Heupel's thinking on it.
No, I got you.
But I believe the best guy, it doesn't matter if he's a freshman or what the team chemistry is or what. You got to play the best player. Always. That always should trump everything else.
I'm gonna go further, guys. I'm gonna go to another crazy Caleb conspiracy, and I need to pour a little coffee because this is crazy. Caleb wants some caffeine when he's about to do this. Okay, so let's just do it right now. And there's no mayonnaise in this coffee. I'm not Will Levis, and that was disgusting. I had to do that last year, John, because I lost a bet with Dave. But let me just point this out.
That's crazy.
Okay, Josh Heupel. I've actually not knocked the decision to start Joe Milton last year, but I am going to knock Josh Heupel's intent. Josh Heupel started Joe Milton last year for the same reason he started Joe Milton in 2022 over Hendon Hooker, to save face. Heupel himself is cocky. And Heupel was, I'm dead serious about this. He took over at Tennessee and he said, I want my guy to start at quarterback. I don't care if other quarterbacks are better than him, so I'm going to go out and get Joe Milton. And I don't care that Hendon Hooker is better in practice than Joe Milton. I'm still starting Joe Milton because I picked him and I'm the smart one and nobody else is. I think that's Josh Heupel. And I'm not saying that's always bad, but I think it was bad with Joe Milton. I think Josh Heupel refused to admit to himself that he screwed up taking Joe Milton in the transfer portal 2 years ago. And he will never acknowledge to himself that he made that mistake. And the only way he cannot acknowledge that to himself is if he started Joe Milton, even if it was the poor decision, because I think he's that cocky.
John?
Well, I think if Caleb's right, that's not a good sign for Tennessee football.
Well, but John, he's not differentiating between Hendon Hooker and Gaston Moore. I mean, there are times in talent judgment where it can be a 60-40. It can be a close call.
That wasn't a close call.
No.
That wasn't a close call. It wasn't remotely close.
Yeah, Hendon Hooker was significantly better when he.
Oh my
saw him play.
gosh! I mean, remember Joe Milton in that Bowling Green in his first games when he played that game? And I will say he improved remarkably over that game, because when I watched that game, I don't know, it was something like 38-6 or something. I don't remember the score, but Tennessee had the game in hand against a weak opponent. But my gosh, I said, this guy doesn't look like an SEC quarterback. I mean, even with his strength and size, it looked like he didn't want to get hit. I mean, he was preparing to go down when contact was forthcoming. Oh my gosh. I mean, I don't understand how Josh Heupel looked at Joe Milton, knowing his offense as well as he does, how he looked at Joe Milton at Michigan and said, that's my guy. What was he thinking? I don't get it.
I'm gonna ask both of you. It's brought to you by Quality Tire Pro. The Eberle family has been Chattanooga community members since 1957. All major brands of tires, full service, automotive, brake alignment. Stop by and say, hey, Bo. Tell them Off the Hook Sports sent you. Hey, Bo, support our sponsors. That's why we're here. Do you think that Josh Heupel has learned from this? Because I could go back and pick another couple of situations that perhaps were because of personnel, but is it Elijah Simmons, who should have never been playing middle linebacker? He's not a fit there. I could go into it and say that Cedric Tillman and Brew McCoy should have come out together, because I think that's the most talented receivers Tennessee has had outside of a guy who's the perfect fit for the slot with his speed, and Jalen Hyatt. Man, I could go through and find places where I think more talented players were kept on the bench. So how big of a concern is this, John?
Well, with those positions, I don't see the obvious disparity. The thing that concerns me is the quarterback situation. I mean, that's the most important position. That's what the position Josh Heupel played. That's his track record for developing quarterbacks and winning with different style quarterbacks. That has baffled me the entire time, because I think he's a really good offensive coach, and I love his offense. And I didn't understand what Joe Milton can't throw effectively on the run.
Or
he just can't. So
or in the pocket, which is bad.
I know, but he's more of a pocket passer than he is throwing on the run. I mean, this offense to work at the highest level, your quarterback needs a Johnny Manziel type. Somebody can be accurate, throwing off balance on the run, whatever. Joe Milton couldn't do that. So I don't understand how Josh Heupel could see this player and think he's going to be a perfect fit for my offense. He was a horrible fit for this offense. To Tennessee's credit, it still won 9 games in the nation's toughest conference.
Yeah, and I'll say this too, Caleb. On our message board, Milton may have been Heupel's project, and it didn't quite pan out like he thought. Easy for me to say. I think there's a very good chance of that. I think this is like the one guy, you got the sports car out in the garage and you really want it to get up and running, but at some point you realize that you've got something that's every bit as effective and is a lot more dependable. Not to say that Nico doesn't have incredible athletic ability. He does, but just because he can't throw the ball 98.5 yards doesn't mean that he's not a whole heck of a lot better than Joe Milton.
So the one thing I will say, to be fair to Heupel, and I'm contradicting myself because I'm still critical of what he did, and I think it's very problematic. And I agree mostly with John. I also agree, John. I don't care what they say they saw in practice. I will never, he doesn't open it to the public. I will never believe, ever for as long as I live, that Joe Milton looked comparable to Hendon Hooker in practice. I think Hendon Hooker looked better in practice and was clearly better in the game. I will say that Jim Harbaugh also thought Joe Milton was a good fit for his offense. And remember, Jim Harbaugh's the passing part of his offense are West Coast concepts. Who thinks Joe Milton is your guy for short intermediate passing routes down the sideline? I mean, that's actually more baffling than Josh Heupel, because at least Joe Milton has the deep ball. Dave may have a point in the sense that maybe coaches and GMs just can't resist that big arm. They just, I've said, it's like the toxic girl at the bar that you know is bad for you, you know is going to cause you problems,
but she doesn't have, but she doesn't have a stitch of clothes on.
Yeah, and she's hot and drunk, and you just can't, I mean, it's like that.
Cindy Crawford in her prime with a drinking problem and has decided to become a nudist. John, you can't pass that up.
No, but I think you could pass Joe Milton up. Look, this is nothing. This isn't a new development. We're just talking about Joe Milton in this case. We've seen it for years. We've seen it for decades. Somebody with a super powerful arm. Oh man, I can't resist him. Why can't you resist it? We look at the quarterbacks who win Super Bowls, who win championships. Joe Montana was going to knock down his receivers with a pass. I mean, all these guys, we see it again and again. You think Josh Heupel was putting an Elway cross in his receivers at Oklahoma? No. This position is about processing information, about seeing the whole field, about being accurate, about coming through in the clutch, about rallying your team. It's not a strongman competition.
Nah,
but John, we've also seen for not just decades, we've seen for millennia that hot women can be very, very, very threatening and damaging if you're not careful. And we still fall for it as men. We still, millennia of evidence that they can derail you if they're toxic, and we still fall for it.
Okay, well, let's set this analogy aside, okay, because you guys really kind of like talking about this a little too much. I don't know how your wives will respond to it, and maybe they'll be fine. But let's just forget that for a minute. We're talking about somebody who doesn't fit your offense, and you're thinking, yeah, he does. I'll make him fit. No, you won't.
Bullshit.
Dave, I still every time John talks, I'm like, my analogy works better.
Caleb took one like right to the chest, and he tried to become devil's advocate, but I mean, it's just that wasn't a good fit in the get, and there we go. And also, I think Kalen on the message board brings up the greatest point. Milton restricted their offense half the field most of the time. That to me was the underlying issue when people try to say, oh, that Joey Halsley. I mean, that's like the equivalent of going into a Walmart and blaming the greeter for not being able to teach you how a television's supposed to hook up to your amplifier, which is
what if the greeter's incredibly hot and wearing hardly any clothing? Does that change the analogy?
It's hard to resist.
Well, then I ain't making the electronics section.
Guys, how often have businesses sold bad products for decades, for centuries, using hot women? I mean,
that's hot.
Hooters wings are mediocre, and they still sell because they have people working there that we all want to see.
Caleb, I think you do great work, and I don't want to take anything away from you, but I do feel like you've been kind of master of the obvious in the last 30 seconds.
Master of the obvious?
No kidding. Hi, he's John Adams. I'm Dave Hooker. His appearance is always brought to you by our very, very good friends at Newbert Collision Center. For over 50 years, Newbert Collision Center is East Tennessee's best choice for quality repair work and fantastic customer service. You can go to joenewbertcollision.com, joenewbertcollision.com. In exactly 2 minutes, we're going to get into a couple of topics that I think are pretty interesting. Your thoughts on what has happened to this point in terms of the NCAA tournament. So look forward to getting into that. John, is your bracket still alive?
Good one.
Yeah, absolutely. He's John Adams. I'm Dave Hooker. Thanks, John.
See you guys.
All right, have a fantastic day. Stay tuned. 2 minutes, and we're back on Off the Hook Sports again. John's appearance brought to you by Newbert Collision Center.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that. If we wouldn't put our family in it, we're not going to put their family in it. If you're going to say that you're doing the best work in Knoxville, now saying it's one thing, producing it and providing it's another.
The largest family-owned collision center in Knoxville is Joe Newbert Collision Center.
Hi, I'm Rick Terry, and we at Rick Terry Jewelry Designs pride ourselves in the highest quality craftsmanship from a family-owned business here in Knoxville for over 35 years. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we also take pride in being an affordable option for all your game day accessories, especially those fire opals. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we want to be your jeweler every day and especially on game day. Go Vols!
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
How's it going, guys? This is John Clabo with Tennessee Homemade Wine and Tennessee Cider Company, and I could hardly sleep last night. I'm so fired up to tell you guys about the club. No longer do you have to order just wine. Now you can get your favorite hard ciders and your favorite homemade wines shipped right to your front door once every quarter. Whether it's 2, 4, 6, or 12 bottles of either or, maybe some of both, get excited, get fired up, join the club today.
'21 Ford Mustang 5.0 GT, 33,540. 2021 GMC Sierra 1500 Denali 4x4, 46,980. 2022 Ford Expedition King Ranch 4x4, 67,550. Ray Varner Ford, your East Tennessee Ford dealership.
They're like, that is total bull.
What is Peyton doing talking to me? And why am I having one of those days?
You suck, you jackass.
Here we go.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
Who's this guy?
Hello, wizard.
The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of Off the Hook Sports,
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
You know, your sentiment rings true still. The Lady Vols don't make a change. With women's athletics, maybe the NCAA tournament is a little more approachable by the Lady Vols next year, or even the SEC. I don't know what all the SEC's coming back, but I just remember the coach at Georgia. Was it Dennis Felton?
Yes.
Who won the SEC tournament and ended up being their coach for another year, and they were going to fire him anyway and still did. So your point is still holds water. It may not prove to be the case. Obviously it didn't, because you said should have been fired before the NCAA tournament. So from what you're seeing, do you think there's a chance they make a change?
Yeah, I still think they do. Again, I think that contract thing is overrated. And I mean, this is where I think you just give coaches extensions just to do it because you can, if they hit certain base level things. And the buyout is you know, as long as it doesn't increase the buyout too much, I don't think it's going to knock the ability to fire a coach. I mean, honestly, because here's the thing, Dave. Now you're in a position where if you don't renew Kellie Harper's contract after this year, well, that sends a clear message that you plan on firing her next year and that she's on the hot seat, right?
I used to think that was a big deal in recruiting. I don't anymore because of the transfer portal. But yes, it sends somewhat of a message. So if you have a tie to her as a prospect, I could see you having a problem with that.
Well, and even just not even beyond recruiting, staff, everything like that. If Danny White doesn't extend her contract, whatever you think with recruiting, think about staff, think about just fans, think about Kellie Harper herself. If you're not going to extend her contract this year, then you're making it very clear that she's on the hot seat, right?
Yes.
I'm not a believer in making it clear someone's on the hot seat. I think you either fire them or extend their contract, basically. I've always been a believer in that. And so I think last year he chose not to fire her, so he extended her contract. This year, he can fire her. And I don't think it's that big of a deal if he does. I mean, people think that, like, that would look bad on Danny White. I don't think he didn't hire Kellie Harper. And so, I mean, he just gave her a contract because you do that because I say you want to make sure you want to be able to go to the public and say, I gave her him, whoever the coach is, every chance possible to succeed. And I didn't try to railroad him. That's what you want out there.
Here's what I would do. And you're not going to like it. Hit that like and subscribe button. I would give her a contract extension to help her in recruiting, but it would be completely baseless. Like it wouldn't be, I mean, I could give you a 15-year contract with no payment penalty after a year. I mean, anybody could do that. So I could say after year one, I owe you $10. You could do that. So I think you do that with Kellie Harper. I think you give her that extension, and I think that's what they will do. You take that buyout and you spread it out in another year. You do not get yourself on the hook for one more dollar. But I believe that's what they will do, not what they should do, because I'd be aggressive and would have made a change when you said so. But I believe that's what they will do. Any disagreement?
I still disagree. I think they will. I think that might be what they did last year. I think the contract extension last year was the one with no teeth, which leads me to believe they'll make this decision. And how can you look at that inbounds defensive play against South Carolina and not? I know y'all call me crazy. People are like, you should never fire a person off one play. Yeah, you should. Yeah, you should. Sometimes a play is so stupid, i.e. Mario Cristobal running a play when he should have taken a kneel down, that I think it's worthy of firing on the spot. I don't know if you agree with me on that ever, Dave, but
it's a little strong. 4 Downs brought to you by Dynasty Pools and Spas. Here we go.
4 Downs brought to you by Dynasty Spas, the most comfortable spas made in the United States of America, right here in East Tennessee. Drop in for the all-new showroom in Athens. Dynasty Spas, perfect for all 4 seasons. 4 Downs, presented by Off the Hook Sports.
I was so excited to watch this NCAA tournament. I have to be honest with you. It's been a little substandard, and I don't say that often. I think it's only the second time that I've said that in my life. So what do people need to do, Cooper, so we can dive into that?
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
Thank you, Coop. First down, Coop.
Coop here. First down.
Good or bad to have fewer upsets in the tournament, especially the first couple of days / opening weekend?
I actually think it's bad. And the reason it's bad, now I'm not an upset lover. I'm not one of those people that like thinks upsets, a tournament that literally is designed for upsets makes it exciting when there is one. But that is the whole selling point of March Madness. College basketball sacrifices its entire regular season for an exciting week of upsets and Cinderella stories. They sacrifice everything for that. So when you don't have it, you've literally taken the only thing college basketball has to make it exciting as a sport right now.
Okay, I'm going to say that it's better now than having a bunch of upsets because the regular season means so little that I think the teams need to have some exposure in the Final Four. And that will help me know, and the casual basketball fan, the names of some of these guys that are going to play next year. So I'll actually say I would rather see the higher seeds and the blue bloods at the end more than I would have ever again, because I believe, leading to your next point,
Cooper Mays here. Second down.
Lack of upsets due to the fact that higher seeds are now more experienced in the NIL. There are probably, oh my goodness, 20 to 50 players that would have gone to Europe or would have gone to the G League, whatever they call it now, or might have tried to get in the NBA but didn't think they'd be a lottery pick. So if you're not a lottery pick, your wisest move is probably to come back to college. So I don't think there's any question that NIL is going to help college basketball. I think it did the same thing with fueling the up seeds. but I love it for basketball, and I think it may have a bigger impact and quality of play than in football, to be real honest with you, Caleb.
I think long term, you may be onto something. This
I
is
don't
where
think I necessarily am now. I'll give you that.
Boy, no, this is actually a good point, because here's something I've said. So, okay, higher seeds are teams that perform well in the regular season. Over the course of a regular season, talent determines who the better teams are, right? No matter how inexperienced you are, talent determines over a 30-game season who's better and who's going to be a higher seed. Is that fair to say?
Agreed.
So, but in a one-game tournament, experience comes into play. Well, now you're at a level where the more talented teams are also the more experienced teams, with the exception of Kentucky. And with that combination, it's going to be harder to pull upsets for the lower seeds to pull these upsets against higher ranked teams. The one and done area, you bring this up, you're right. It's still there, but it's nowhere near as prominent as it was. So I think the golden age of upsets in March Madness was like 2008 to 2020, about that period. Like before then, you had upsets, but they weren't as crazy. And
well, it's funny you say that because, well, one of the years that I thought was the best was right towards the end of that, and I thought there was another one since COVID that has been kind of blah. So you've got me in a time frame with two blah ones that been one of the best ones I ever saw around 2018. So I'm not going to go back and look at all of them, but you've got me in a pretty good spot.
Yes. And so, I mean, like for instance, until about 2008, obviously no 16 seed had ever beaten a 1 seed, and very few 15 seeds had beaten 2 seeds. And then over the past 12 years, you had a 15 seed team make the Sweet 16. You had a year with 2 15 seeds upset 2 seeds. You've had 2 16 seeds upset 1 seeds. I think that's coming back down. I think it's leveling back out to where college basketball used to be, where in the first weekend, you'll have 1 or 2 amazing upsets that everybody remembers. And then you'll start to see the better teams, kind of filter their way through as the weeks go on.
I've got another reason, by the way, that the tournament doesn't have as much luster that I'm going to throw on you. First, it's time for Third Down, brought to you by Dynasty Pools and Spa Showroom in Athens, delivered within 125 miles. They're awesome.
Tennessee Center Cooper Mays here. Third down.
All right, third down. It's the lack of upsets due to the fact that higher seeds, I'm sorry, is it good or bad for the sport to have fewer upsets, which would mean less parity in the future? Would we like to see 10, 15, 20 teams distance themselves from the field, or have a one dominant team like UNLV or Duke in their little mini runs, or Florida in their mini runs? Do we have to have that in basketball? Does that matter? And it's more likely to happen if guys are staying around because of NIL money.
So you're saying this is going to bring more parity in the future, even if there's not a lot of upsets right now?
Yeah, I don't think you've got to. I think it's going to bring no. I'm sorry, the exact opposite. I think it's going to bring less parity, because I believe there are going to be programs that are going to be able to afford those players, those clutch players, like Dalton Knecht. I mean, he was the gem of the transfer portal, and Tennessee got him with some pretty deft recruiting by Rick Barnes. I'm sure he got something, but that wasn't money-based. For the most part, I think these decisions are going to be money-based, and then I think North Carolina is going to be able to pay more than a Temple. I think you're going to see a little bit of a gaping hole in the middle in terms of the top 10, 15, 20 teams, and then everybody else.
See, I actually disagree with you, interestingly enough. I think that, because remember, Dalton Knecht wasn't even rated coming out of high school. And this is where there's a big deal on this, is that the NBA has, okay, let's take basketball for a minute. With basketball recruiting, there's the top 5 recruits and then everybody else, right? I know there's 25 5-stars, but in reality, it's just 5 recruits that just stand out. Maybe even 1 or 2, honestly. You tell me. I mean, there's a Kevin Durant one year, there's a Derrick Rose one year, there's a Greg Oden and Mike. There's never more than 2 or 3, actually.
It seems like usually there's one major one that is practically a can't miss, and then there's like 2 to 5 behind him that you're thinking are a probably not miss.
Exactly. Every other recruit in college basketball, from number 6 to like 600, have much more similar odds of being great Like there's less of a gap. So the 6th best recruit in college football versus the 200th best recruit in college football, the 6th best is almost 99% of the time going to be better, right?
Yes.
I don't think that's the case in college basketball. I think the 6th best in college basketball versus the 200th best in college basketball, if the 100th best goes to the right program with the right coach with the right development, could easily be better than the 6th best recruit in that same year. And that's why I think there will still be more parity, because while NIL won't be able to, you're right, the big programs won't be able to purchase those Kevin Durant's or those Anthony Davises or the people like that. You'll get a lot of NIL collectives to get one kid to stay home at a Marquette or a Creighton or a place like that, and even smaller schools. And because it's, I still think it's going to be very spread out. So I still think there's going to be parity in the sport because of that.
I'm going to support your parity argument, even though I disagree with it, but for a far different reason. 4 Downs is brought to you by Dynasty Pools and Spas in Athens. 4 Downs means 4 seasons of great spa comfort, and it's incredible on your back as well. I can testify to that. Dynasty Pools and Spas. It's not the players. It's those guys that are walking the sidelines. That's what's affected upsets in the tournament. Just imagine having the best spas made right here in the United States of America in your backyard. What about that? Dynasty Pools and Spas. Their showroom is open in Athens, right off the interstate. You can stop by and check out the best hot tubs and spas in the market. And then delivery, yes, they can do that to Knoxville or Chattanooga. They've got complete support, spa cover, and chemicals to keep your spa bubbling at its best. They also have pool chemicals as well. Dynasty Pools and Spas, amazing discounts for first responders, military, and even some blemish models that can save you a ton, and no one will ever notice. Mention Off the Hook Sports, get $500 off. Mention Off the Hook Sports, get $500 off. Dynasty Pools and Spas. Go to dynastypoolsandspas.com or stop by that showroom in Athens. dynastypoolsandspas.com. Dynasty Pools and Spas. Caleb, I've never been a big fan of Mike Krzyzewski, but it seemed like every time he was coming into the tournament, there was a record on the line. It seemed like with Bobby Knight, you were waiting to see if he could win that second championship. It always seemed like there was a good storyline. Coach Calipari had a loaded team. Is this the time that he can show everybody that he's right with a one and done? I don't know that there's, other than few, maybe Mark Few, not few people, Mark Few, that there's a great storyline around some of these coaches. And I always thought that college basketball was as much about the notoriety of its coaches than any other sport. And half the time in the NFL, they run such similar things right now. You don't even know who the head coach is. Same thing with the NBA. I know who the head coaches are in all these matchups, don't you?
Yeah, college basketball is much more scattered out with elite coaches that don't win national titles. So there are a bunch of coaches that are always knocking on the door. And you have a few of those in this tournament. You have Mark Few, who, again, I think the evidence is there. Mark Few not winning a title has just been bad luck at this point, because he's a great coach. He always has Gonzaga in the Elite Eight, Sweet 16, Final Four. And then obviously Rick Barnes is another one. The other storyline is Matt Painter. I mean, the idea Purdue was a 1 seed who lost last year. The last 1 seed that lost to a 16 seed in the first round went on to win the NCAA tournament the next year. So you do have quite a few intriguing storylines. I mean, even another one, Shaka Smart has Marquette in the Sweet 16. He was at Texas after Rick Barnes, and they're both there now. And, I still think there are storylines in college basketball. The thing about college basketball is, doesn't it seem like there are a lot more respected veteran coaches in college basketball without national titles? Whereas in football, if you don't have a national title, there's very few. Frank Beamer is the only one I can think of, right? That's a long-term veteran coach who just doesn't have a title ring, but you always respected him.
Oh, wow, that's a good one. Yeah, I can't think of anybody else that you look at and you say, that was a great elite coach, but he doesn't have a title. No, I can't. That's a good one.
Yeah. And you say that about college basketball all the time. Like, people respect what Rick Barnes has to say. People respect what Mark Few has to say. I think Josh Heupel is a great coach, but I don't think the college football universe is going to be like, let's see what Josh Heupel has to say on this topic right now. And so I think that's, you don't have a lot of respected statesmen in college football who don't have national titles.
for lack of a better term.
Absolutely right. Hey, I want you to check something out if you guys can. I'd greatly appreciate it. Just take a look at this. It is our Hooker's Corner page that we would love for you to join. That way I can disseminate some information we might have quickly to you. But also for just $9.98, you can put yourself in a position to win great weekly prizes and a great monthly prize as well. So you can see over my shoulder, if you're on our video platform, that you can win an awesome mini helmet that is worth well over $250 with Rue McCoy's signature on it, the fantastic Tennessee Vol, who happens to be a great young man as well. All you have to do to make yourself eligible for those weekly and monthly prizes is go ahead and pay that $9.98. You can be a John on Hooker's Corner. We would love to have you. We're always hiring at Hooker's Corner, if you know what I mean. Yeah. But we would love to have you. Great way to interact with the fans. You may have a question for Spencer Riley, the former Vol offensive lineman, or let's say Fred White. You may give me a great idea for a column. That could all happen at Hooker's Corner. We love the interaction. Already quite a few people sign up. We want you to do the same thing. And just for $9.98, you can win big time prizes. So jump on there and join. And I just realized I haven't been saving it the whole time. So there it is. You can see it on our video platform. It is very easy to find. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and put it in the message board so you can check that out. And we would love to have you a part of Hooker's Corner. Now, there is no Kalen on Hooker's Corner. There is a Caleb, however, though, and that's who we want to get to right now. So you have a bit of a shift change at the University of Alabama. Everything was crazy, wild, hairy-carry. All the players are leaving. These coaches are no good. What has happened? And now, Caleb, there's a different feel in Tuscaloosa. Why?
Yes, Alabama has actually very quietly, shall we say, been climbing back up the recruiting trail after getting wrecked in the transfer portal. They have picked up 2 key 4-stars in the month of March in wide receiver Derek Smith and linebacker Darrell Johnson. They are now number 6 in the national recruiting rankings right now, which, again, if you know where they were and what could have happened, that's kind of a big deal, actually. And I think and just recently they picked up linebacker Luke Metz. He is not as highly touted, but he is in the 2025 class. He is a 3-star, but they're starting to add some players, guys. And when you add in the fact that I think it seems pretty obvious at this point, it hasn't been confirmed, but Caden Proctor, it seems like it's going back to Alabama, isn't he? I think that's what I've heard.
I would think so. So give me the star numbers again on those guys, and I will point something out.
Well, Luke Metz is a 3-star, Darrell Johnson is a 4-star, and Derek Smith is a 4-star. And there are some other ones they've gotten this month. Excuse me, I missed a few. I'm sorry. They picked up Antonio Coleman this month, who is also a 4-star. They've picked up Zymair Smith, who is a 3-star. They've picked up Abdul Sanders Jr., who's a 3-star, and I mentioned Metz. So we're talking 1, 2, 3, counting them now, 4, 5, 6. They've got 6 commitments this month, and 4 of them are 4-stars, guys. So they're not dominating what like they were back in the day, but they're not doing too poorly for Kalen DeBoer's first class.
Okay, but let me ask you this: where do they rank in the SEC? You said they're up to 6th.
So in the SEC, they rank, and I'm going to pull this up now, and this is obviously going to include Texas and Oklahoma, but in the SEC, Dave, they rank. You're going to be shocked by this. They rank 2nd.
Yeah, that doesn't shock me. Is Georgia number 1?
No, LSU is number 1 in the SEC. Notre Dame's number 1 overall right now. LSU's number 2. Clemson's number 3. Ohio State's number 4, and Penn State is actually number 5. And then Alabama and Auburn are 6 and 7.
All right, it's a new poll question, and it's going to be on our YouTube page. Please take advantage of that. And the poll question is this: as far as Kalen DeBoer, Does he scare you at Alabama? 3 options, not at all. A bit. He's had success, which should be your answer. And then we have yes, he has Bama behind him. Well, it seems to me that Alabama has gotten their NIL ducks in a row, which that's more than Florida can say, and that's more than was the case just 3 months ago. So I give Kalen DeBoer or somebody credit for getting that organized, because I felt like they could freeze up on commitments for 3 or 4 months, and that would have been a death sentence to the program.
Yeah, and that's where I wanted to get to. Did we write him off too early? Did we write Kalen DeBoer now?
I mean, I don't think so. I think what's right off too early? What is, so he eventually gets fired? Is that your definition?
He gets fired and they implode as a program. And I thought that because of what you just said, their NIL ducks in a row. Maybe it wasn't writing off Kalen DeBoer. It was writing off the program under Kalen DeBoer, because I never thought they'd get their NIL ducks in a row. Now, they may be getting their NIL ducks in a row. Do you think maybe the boosters got the message of you can't expect a discount to go play for Alabama?
Yeah, and I don't know each individual kid, but here's what I'm being told, Caleb, is that the money that's being thrown around for high school kids is not what we thought it was. I think Nico is like one of the luckiest human beings in the history of man. And I'm not even exaggerating.
Because it came out at the perfectly right time.
He came out at the perfectly right time, and he got paid just to be a high school player. Nowadays, I think the NIL money is going to go to guys that have proven they can play at the college level, whether that be somebody going from Oregon State to Tennessee, which I think we all would agree is a step up, or whether that's somebody going from MTSU to Tennessee. I don't think you're going to dole out $2 million for the next Mater D high school quarterback. That's just, I think those days are already over.
So wait a minute. Let's back this up for a minute. Do you think with the way this is going, and this is a different topic for another day, but like in 25 years, college football is going to effectively be like not the whole sport, but like it'll operate like a farm system where the smaller schools recruit the 5-star talent, and then the bigger schools pay them to come transfer from the smaller schools to come play for them. Like or do you think, or will it be like some schools are the Yankees and the Red Sox that go by talent, and then other schools other schools are just, they're drafting well and they're identifying talent very well.
That's very fun to talk about, but you can't do that, because if you had your teams out of the South, you just beat the bejesus out of everybody that was out west, right? I mean, if you got Georgia guys that have gone through that program, who's going to be tougher, them or Stanford guys?
That is true. You're right. I mean, so you're saying there is a factor of going through the program wherever you're at, and practicing against the veterans and the elite players, practicing against those players when you're younger. Does that help you develop? Is what you're saying?
Yes, and being taught by them.
Okay,
huge as well. Being taught by great coaches who you're taught by, I think, is a factor. Yeah,
true, but I don't think there's, and I've been wrong on this in the past, but I don't think there's a big difference in coaching at the elite areas versus the lesser areas. I just think the talent is different. I mean, I thought, look, for a long time, and it turned out he wasn't as good as I thought, but I thought David Shaw was one of the better coaches in college football. But he was, he was winning Pac-12 titles at Stanford regularly. And so I thought that. I just thought he didn't have the talent to ever compete in the SEC. And so I think it kind of depends. Like, is Kirby Smart that much better than the best coach you could think of in the Big Ten right now? Or is he just a good coach who also happens to be in an area where he can load up on talent?
Well, to answer your original question, I have not changed my mind at Kalen DeBoer whatsoever. I still think he's going to fail miserably at Alabama. They're up to 6, but just 8 commitments. I know they've got a good handful of 4 stars, but I got to see him do it for longer. I've got to see him be up in the top 2 or 3, and I just don't think that Alabama is going to be able to bounce back anytime soon from what they underwent when a legend retired. It's not going to happen, in my opinion.
I think with Alabama, you're going to see, and guys, Dave and I talked about this on the phone, so I actually want to say it out loud on the show. I think you're going to see what they would have been early under Rich Rodriguez had they hired Rich Rodriguez.
I think that's what they're going to look like.
I think that's actually a pretty good comparison because both of these coaches, DeBoer and Rodriguez, were known for their offenses at that time, respectively. So, yeah, I could see that. And I'll still say that I thought Rodriguez would have been a fine hire, if not a very good hire at the University of Alabama. I kind of thought that he might bring in a whole new thought process at Alabama and might be ahead of the rest of the SEC. And then I guarantee you what happened is a certain Jimmy Sexton called him Al Moore at Alabama and said, this Nick guy may be interested. And then Rich Rodriguez was cut out and it wasn't going to happen.
Well, no, the opposite happened. Mal had made the offer to Rich and Jimmy Sexton told Mal Nick was interested.
That's what I just said.
No, but here's the thing. Mal, because he had such integrity, actually was going to wait for Rich Rodriguez's answer and was probably going to give him the offer if Rodriguez accepted. Rodriguez turned it down. Largely because
that?
Yes, I do. Because here's why. And here's why I really do believe that, believe it or not. Don't forget that West Virginia team in 2007 that Rodriguez was going back to. That was the greatest team in West Virginia history. And had they stayed healthy, they'd have won the national title with Pat White and Steve Slayton. They were a Pat White injury away from winning the national title that year. And I think Rodriguez didn't want to walk away from that.
Portions of the program brought to you by Apex Apparel Group Solutions. Man, Apex Apparel, go to orderapexapparel.com, orderapexapparel.com, or call 865-919-3001, 865-919-3001. Call Tyler at that number and get 15% off your first order. That's 15% off of your first order. They are absolutely fantastic. So, you like the Rich Rodriguez hire?
I still think. Well, I can't. I want to say it would have worked out, but I can't look past how badly he failed at Michigan. He was so bad at Michigan. But again, Michigan, to be fair, they were more constructed specifically for a power I pro style offense. Not that Alabama wasn't; they were, but I think Alabama had athletes to adjust a little bit better, even if Michigan had more talent at that time. And I think had Rich Rodriguez stayed at Michigan, he'd have had the program doing better than what Brady Hoke did. I'll tell you that.
That's fair. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. This has been the